history is missing from our economics education. Well, at least mine. If you watch this video, I'm going to tell you all about why I'm saying this. So a little bit about me. I studied economics in university because I wanted to understand how the world works. That's why I chose it. And economics seemed to me as very fundamental to understanding how the world works and how we cooperate with each other and how the world functions. Of course, I was also fascinated about money, about businesses, about how is the reality of the world we live in? How does that work, simply said. So I studied economics and I very quickly noticed that, okay, well, I was pretty bad at math in high school and that was going to be a problem because the economics I studied in university was a lot of math. So we got some models. We started off with a model in my macroeconomics class, which went like this. Y is C plus I plus G. Well, Y stands for the current economy or the GDP of the economy. C was the consumption, I was the investment, and G was the government expenses. So if you would add up the consumption, the investment, and the government expenses, you would get the GDP of the economy. And then you could model stuff. You could say, okay, let's say consumption went up. Well, then something else, then Y would have gone up as well. Or you could say, well, investment had gone up. Well, then consumption needs to go down if Y stays the same. And then there was a little like note on the sides. Hey, this equation or this type of thinking comes from an economist called John Maynard Keynes. He lived then and then, and yeah, basically very short. We didn't really go into it into the lecture. It was only in the book. In the lecture, we just went into the mathematics, and in the end, well, what was the most important? What was tested on the test? And the test, it was purely the mathematical, the modeling that was tested. So of course, I was, I think, a bit more interested than my fellow students. So I would read the book and I would learn a little bit about the John Maynard Keynes. But my fellow students, yeah, they didn't open the book. They just wanted to learn what was needed on the test. So they just learned the math stuff. That's what we talked about. That's what we learned because that's what you had to do to pass. And there was never any discussion about the ideas behind about the equations we were learning. So it was just, yeah, very much thinking of it as a science, or at least trying to make it a science, and never talking about the big ideas. Like I never had a class on the difference between capitalism and communism, which in my opinion is the fundamental debate in economics. Like capitalism, communism in between, and let's say maybe you're somewhere in between. Well, then are you more to the right or to the left? I think a lot of economics boils down to that question, and we didn't even discuss it. Also, the fact that we only discussed a lot of a certain type of economics, more, you could say left wing, I would say. For example, Friedrich Hayek, which I made a video about, we didn't discuss him at all, like his books or models. And I took a lot of like extra courses and minors and whatever, were never discussed, like ever. So, yeah, I would say that the basic university graduate that just studied what he had to learn and that he was tested on, he comes out of university with a very skewed understanding of economics. I don't think he would really understand anything about how the world works. At least he didn't learn that in school. And he didn't understand anything about the big ideas that are important in economic debate and history. And that's why I say history is important, because in history, there were a lot of economic thinkers and they all had their ideas. The Karl Marx, Adam Smith, Keynes, Hayek, Friedman, and basically every single debate on economics has already been had. And a lot of debates in politics today can be placed in the context of those historical debates. So let's say people are talking right now about a wealth tax increase, and I see a lot of, opinion makers in the newspapers, and then they use arguments that are, they tell them like they're new, but of course, hundreds of years ago, people have been using the same arguments for and against the wealth tax. And then they talk like there's no, let's say they're for the wealth tax. Well, then they act like there's no argument against it. Well, there's hundreds of years of debates and arguments against a wealth tax, and there's a lot of smart people that are think about it. And I think in history, it's more, there's a more, people look at it like, okay, there's maybe more two sides to it, or any other. In politics, there's also, okay, there's a right and a left, blah, blah, blah. And in economics, I think there's just really nothing like that. And I think a large part is because we don't teach enough like history of economic thought. And that's why I wanted to make these videos that I'm making. So maybe if you have watched a couple of videos right now, that's the goal of my channel, to to teach you a little bit about economic ideas, about the history of economic thought, and also to get in contact with people that like the same stuff. Okay, thanks for watching. Let me know what you, yeah, if you studied economics or you had it in high school, university, or wherever you had it, or you read economic books. Let me know how you learned it and what do you think is missing, or what do you think about my points that we need more history in economics. Okay, see ya. Bye bye.